for today's purpose, we're going to talk about using AI in the assessment process. And I tried to stick to everything that we talked about in the description. Sometimes, you have descriptions and you think, well, I don't know if really want to talk about all that, but I touched on all of it, some a little bit heavier than others because there's things that I definitely want to talk about more, and it's my presentation, so I get to do whatever I want to do. It's a great part of being an instructional designer. And Julie can, or Laura can just yell at me later for going off topic. No, it's all good. It's all great information. And this isn't anything new if you're not aware of how much AI is changing education and what we do. Then you have the shock of the century coming really soon because it is here. And no matter what we think of it, our opinions of it, it is changing how we grade, how we assess students, how we engage with our students, and how we teach. It's really impossible not to consider either its use or its impact on our teaching moving forward. So it's something that at some point in time, all of us are going to have to wrestle with and re-wrestle with as it becomes more and more ingrained in our society and the lives of our students. So why are we talking about AI in assessment? Because it matters now, and it's something that we can use to varying degrees, whatever you're comfortable with, to really make our teaching better and allow us to focus on those really important things like building the relationships with our students. Um, it's not new that our class sizes are getting more full. We are getting more students, and we are having to grade more and more. At least that's what I feel like. And so when we look at AI in terms of supporting us in our grading workload, it can really help to use our time more efficiency. One of the reasons that I first started engaging with AI in my grading, and don't worry, we're going to talk about creating assessments, but I want to talk about grading first, is that it really helped me to be more objective in my grading process. No matter objective, no matter how objective you think that you are, if you're sitting there grading 15, 20, 30, 40 essays, the person you were when you graded essay or assignment number one is not the same person you are when you've graded that number 45 student. Whether we become a little bit easier in our grading, a little bit more grumpy in our grading, when we hit that last student, we are different people than when we first started grading. By thinking that we are not, it's saying that we are the same person when we started a marathon than when we are on mile 26. That type of endurance as we do a lot of grading is going to change how we grade. And so one of the things that I've really enjoyed using AI in is making sure that I'm more objective as I go through my grading process. And we'll look at some of that too later. It allows me to focus on growth, becoming a better educator. It finds the gaps in what I am grading, and it allows me to build more creative assessment types, more creative types of feedback for my students. And then that allows me to build more relationship with my students. And more research comes out that validates the fact that relationship in teaching ties really closely to the success our students have. And so if I can free up other tasks or create more tasks that are offload some of the tasks to be more objective and relationship building onto AI, then that's definitely something that I'm going to be a fan of using. All right, so let's look at how we can use AI to actually design our assessment. So there's lots of different things that we can use. For most of the people in here, this isn't going to be any new information. I'm sure you're already doing this, but I don't know why it has a random two in there. That's going to totally bother me. Ignore that too. These tools can help you to generate questions that align to either academic standards, curriculum frameworks, whatever it is that you're trying to align with, objectives, skills, competencies, whatever vernacular you are choosing to engage with. You can generate quiz questions and assessments that align with those standards much more closely. You can tailor assessments by different cognitive level. I know the concept of Bloom's taxonomy isn't something that every person graduates from their master's degree program able to align all of their teaching to a Bloom's taxonomy. Even though I came from education, I had never even heard of Bloom's taxonomy until the second year of my teaching. It was pretty much a big eye-opening thing of, oh my goodness, I'm less prepared than I thought I was. Or Webb's depth of knowledge. You can create objectives that match specific learning, create questions that match those learning objectives. We talked about that. Include detailed explanation and model answers to deepen students' understanding. Here is one of those things that we all know that it's best practice. Even if we have standardized feedback quiz or auto-graded quizzes, we know that it's best practice for every right answer and for every wrong answer. We should have that automatic feedback for students. And I don't know about you, but I always start strong in doing this, but there is not any of my classes where I have been able to get solid feedback on every single one of my auto-graded quizzes. It's hit or miss. And so AI is something that can really help you to be able to get all of those things that we know are best practices done, to have that automatic feedback, even on those self-graded quizzes. In Canvas, it makes it super easy to just have a pop-up and say, that's right, this body part connects to that body part, however you want to do it, to be able to provide that feedback. So assessments become pedagogically sound and are appropriately challenging. We'll look at some ways when we're giving AI a prompt that can help us create assessments that are appropriately challenging for what it is we are trying to assess. That's another way that I really enjoyed using AI. You're never going to come to a presentation where I'm talking about assessment that I'm not going to refer to the TILT framework. It is something that I strongly believe in, and when I started applying this to every single one of my assessments, I really saw an elevation in the quality of what my students submitted back to me. And so the TILT framework is basically transparency in learning and teaching. And it aims to, just as the name implies, make what we're assessing to students much more clear and transparent. So in every assessment, whether it's a discussion board, a quiz, a full-blown assignment, by applying the TILT framework, we're going to create more transparent assessments. And this is important because it's something that we want to tell AI to do when we look at the prompt engineering in just a second. So TILT framework says that we identify the purpose of the assignment. So whether it is the skills that we're aligning with, the competencies we're aligning with, the knowledge you're hoping students will gain, whatever it is that the purpose of the assignment is, we want to make that transparent to students. It's basically your why. It comes down to good teaching, good parenting skills. I always, when I teach a parenting class, tell my students, you can have all sorts of rules and you might not want to tell your kids the why, but make sure in your head you do have a why. And this is something we should be doing for our assessments. We don't want to just create busy work. So by being clear and transparent to our students on the why we're having them do it, it makes it more clear to us on maybe there isn't truly a reason I want them to do this assignment beyond the fact that I just like it. By saying, here are the skills, here is the knowledge base that you're going to gain, we make that more transparent to students, and it creates better assessments for us. All right, so we've got the purpose as part of our TILT framework. Now we have the tasks. And this is where we take that assignment and we break that complex, whatever we're having them doing, and create different, or a set of steps that they have to complete that assignment in. This is also a great way we're going to look at that AI can help us to break that assignment into those clear and concrete tasks or steps that they have to do. So often or not, we just put a whole blurb, a paragraph on do all of these things. And what it really helps students is to be able to see the clearly defined tasks they have to complete in order to submit that assignment at a proficient level. And then lastly, we want to make it clear what the criteria for success is. And when it's possible, providing an example is a great way to go. Sometimes we can't because the example will give them the answer or will hinder their creative response. But however it is that we choose to make transparent what the criteria of success is, we need to give that to students. So maybe it's a very clear, here is what a successful student submission will look like. It will be about 3 sentences. It will be in depth with reflection, whatever it is, no matter the assessment type, even if it's just a basic discussion board. We want to make sure and have all of these elements, including what does a successful submission look like? Questions so far? I see the chat, Lori. Are we all good? I'm assuming you'll interrupt me if
We're
it's something
good.
I need to interrupt with. Perfect. Okay.
No, I think we're good. Yep, we're good.
Okay. So as well as talking about the tilt framework, I'm always going to talk about backward design. You can make that assumption. I will always advocate for backward design. So as well as knowing that what the tilt framework is and applying it to our assessment, we also want to think about this as backward design. And all of these concepts are important. I'm not just speaking to you as an instructional designer, but this is going to relate to what we're going to talk to the AI about in creating our assessments. So we want to start with our backward design. So basically what backward design is, if you're not familiar with it, is we start with the learning outcomes. What is it I want my students to learn? Now, if you're doing a whole course, you're going to start with your whole learning outcomes. If we're talking about just the basic assessment that you're creating, start with that. What is it that I want my students to learn in this assessment? And then we design the assessment. And then the backward design is, all right, so if this is what I want my students to learn, and this is how I'm going to assess that knowledge, what is the content that I need to provide to the student to make sure they can be successful in that assessment? And this, for many instructors, especially if they're just starting teaching, is a totally foreign concept because oftentimes we're handed a book and we say, all right, you're teaching out of this book. And then we rifle through and think, oh, this looks like a good assessment. And then maybe we think about the outcomes of that. So backward design, just like the name implies, we're starting from the backwards. We're saying, here is what my students to know. Here is how I'm going to assess that knowledge. And here is the instructor, what I'm going to compile and put together to make sure I'm giving my students all the information so that they can be successful. By the way, it's also one of the reasons that I'm a huge advocate for OER because you can guarantee you're giving students all the information that they need to know. All right. So then how do we use AI to get to our perfect assessment? Now that we understand what the tilt framework is, we understand why we need to do backward design. What is it that we need to start engaging with an AI in and information we need to provide to it so that we have a great assessment tool. So one of the first things that I have to decide when I am engaging this activity is how much time I want students to spend on this activity. And it might seem like, well, that's a crazy thing to think about. But what I found is if I didn't do that and didn't think clearly about the time I wanted students to devote, AI would come up with these assessments that would be hours and hours and hours of students' time. And so, if I'm just trying to create maybe a very simple assessment that is looking at one particular skill in a module, and I want it to just be a very simple formative assessment for the end of a module, I don't want it to create something that's going to take students 5 hours to do. I want it to be something, a discussion board that's going to take students 15 minutes to think about, 30 minutes to think about. Whatever it is, I've found, and this was more of a recent discovery, that by thinking through how much time I want students to devote to this assessment, it created a much more accurate assessment the first time around talking to the AI. This also helps us, especially if we're teaching a fully online class, to think about the workload. What most instructors have a tendency to do when they're designing a fully online class is to exponentially increase the workload students have to do instead when they're teaching a face-to-face class. And so by thinking about, okay, if I was teaching a face-to-face class, this would be just an assessment that I'd want them to complete for 30 or 40 minutes at home after we've done all the classwork. So establish that before you think about the assessment. This is just going to be a brief quiz. It really should just take them 30 minutes. This is going to be a comprehensive exam I want you to put together. They should spend about an hour on it. Think through that because it's going to help shape the direction the AI is going to help you come up with that assessment. The next thing is define the assessment depth. So figure out, okay, is this a very surface level vocabulary quiz for students? Is this something that's going to be a higher order thinking task or a lower order thinking task? You can pull out your Bloom's taxonomy and look at it there if you want. But think about what is the depth of critical thinking that I want students to do for this task, because that's something else, another piece of information you're going to want to give to that AI. And then not the last element, but another element you want to consider is you want to think about what is the output type I want to allow students to do. Now, I'm a big advocate for universal design for learning. So whenever possible, I want to give students as many different options and how they output the information as possible. And this is why backwards design is so important. Because when we start with what I want students to demonstrate they know, then I get less tied to what that modality is. So if I want students to be able to demonstrate that they know how to properly do a hygienic diaper change, then it doesn't matter if they write a paper, if they do a pamphlet, if they do a flyer, if they do a video, if they do whatever it is. The skill I want them to be able to articulate they know how to do is to do a hygienic diaper change. So it doesn't matter what the modality is. And so when I'm having AI help me create that assessment, then I can tell it explicitly that this is what the skills are. I want students to be able to creatively come up with a way to display that knowledge, but you can provide some suggestions on how they do display that knowledge. If it's something where you do want a specific artifact, so if I want them to produce a brochure and that's part of what the skill is that I'm assessing, then that's going to be a very clear piece of information I need to give to the AIs. By sitting and thinking through these steps before we engage with the I promise it's going to save you a lot of time from going back and forth and being super frustrated in the quality of the output that you're generating. We've all heard the term garbage in, garbage out. So the better quality information we provide to the AI, the more quality information it's going to give us, and it's going to be leveraged in a way that is truly beneficial to our teaching. Any questions so far? Okay, so we've talked about all of the foundational pieces of that assessment that we've had to think through. We're still having to think about other things too and provide that information to the AI. And this can be something where you have a standardized template that you input each time you start a new chat for that specific course. You can revisit the same chat. These are the foundational things that the AI needs to know before you start engaging in the assessment. But maybe it applies to all the assessments. So you can front load this type of information before you're engaged with a specific assessment. What grade level or academic year? If we're teaching to advanced biology students, that's going to be a much different type of assessment than this is 10th grade biology students or kindergarten students. And that makes a difference in the type of assessment suggestions the AI is going to give you. What prior knowledge do they bring? If this is the third class in a sequence of courses, then it's going to be important the AI understands they're going to bring in a lot of foundational knowledge. So these are, again, things that you have to think through as you're looking at, okay, this is the skill. Remember, we've decided what the skill or the knowledge they're going to demonstrate is. What is the foundational knowledge they already have to have before they can demonstrate that skill? And so that's something we want the AI to understand as well. What are the learning needs and the challenges? So perhaps you're teaching a course that it is all adult learners that are taking this course after they've worked full time. Those types of things can make a difference because it can help the AI to think creatively about the type of assessment that it creates, and it honors the student's place and where they are in their lives. What is their experience with the subject matter? Again, is this a first year class or is it an end of their career class? Is it a professional development class? What are the experiences the students are bringing in? And does it matter? If it doesn't matter, then say that. And then you also want to include what your whole course is about. What are the core themes and concepts? If I'm teaching a statistics class, that's going to be much different than I'm teaching an infant toddler class. So even though we think by saying the knowledge and the skills, it's clear to the AI what I'm talking about, you want to tell it, here's what this course is about. So I always start if I'm looking at my infant toddler class, I'm teaching an infant toddler class that's for practitioners who are going into the field to be an infant or toddler teacher. That's a very important framework for the AI to have before it starts generating these assessments, just like all of this stuff is. How does the assessment fit into the curriculum sequence? Is this something that's at the very end of the course? If it's at the beginning of the course, do those things even matter? These are things that you need to think through. What skills are you emphasizing this semester? So that backwards design is still coming into play. and what real world applications matter most. Now, for me, teaching a child development course, the real world application is super duper important. So I will always make sure in every assessment I create, I tell them a project-based approach and creating artifacts and products that students can use in the field is very important to me. And that's really going to bring the AI into a certain direction versus I just want to have a formative assessment that's a simple knowledge check. Those are two different things that products that I want the AI to produce. So again, before we even engage with the AI in this process, we're going to have to do a lot of thinking. So we're not offloading our job, because I'll get into some conversations with faculty that say, I'm not going to offload my job to AI. You're having to do a whole lot of your job and thinking before you even engage with the AI. These are all the things that only you can do as a faculty teaching the course. So now we have all of this information. And so we're literally plugging, after we've thought about it, written it down, gone down, we're plugging all of this into that AI. So now we've given it to them and we use AI to generate that first draft of the assessment, or maybe you have an assessment that you want it to tweak. Whatever it is, if you give it something that you want it to revise, you still are going to give it all that information and you're going to take a look at that output. And then you're going to review critically that output that it is in there. I know sometimes it can be such a strong temptation when I'm trying to get an assessment ready at 10 o'clock at night for a module that I need to open at 8 o'clock the next morning. The temptation is strong to read those first three sentences, goes, it looks like it's got it. I'm fine. I'm just going to publish it. Every time I'm tempted to do that, when I get to the end, go, ooh, that's not the direction I wanted to go. So you really want to make sure and read through the entire assessment with a critical eye, check for the alignment with those learning objectives and the appropriate difficulty. What I find the AI really heavily leans to is making the assessment more difficult than I intended it to be. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it's, that's not really the direction I want to go as far as the depth of analysis or the expectation for that assessment. So make sure you read it through. Make the adjustments. So go export it, put it on a Word document, make the adjustment to the assessment, the quiz questions, whatever it might be, and then put it back into the AI. And then tell it, and this is my favorite thing to do now, because even though it helped to generate the assessment, when I say, what questions might students have about the assessment, you're forcing it to take a critical look at what it created. And so they'll always come up with a list of questions. Now, sometimes half of them are going, that's not really what a human student would have. But many times, almost every time, there is a question that the AI will generate that is legit. And I sit there and go, oh, yeah, that isn't clear, but I can hear my student's voice and an email coming through asking that specific question. So take the time after you've iterated the assessment, plugged it back in, said, what are the questions students might have? And remember, this is the important thing. You've already told it the level of student and the type of student that you're going to be working with. So it's formulating an informed question based on the information you've already given it. It's a beautiful part of AI. So it reveals those confusing points. Take the time to answer each and every one of those questions and then tell it, all right, do a new iteration of the assessment within the TILT framework. Oh, I forgot to put on the slide. Make sure and tell it you want the TILT framework. And it'll recreate that assessment, the larger assessments. Any questions about that process so far?
Just to clarify, sorry, this is
Yep.
Irene.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
I remember you talked about the tilt framework. Did you incorporate that into the instructions? I'm trying to go
Yeah,
back. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay. So
so
that
I'll
was
I'll
in.
tell it incorporate the tilt framework.
Okay.
I realized, oh, I forgot to put that on the
Okay.
slide. I didn't make that connection. And really the beautiful part is you don't have to tell the AI what the tilt framework is. It already knows. So I don't have to explain it. I can just say, like it would be right here. When I'm talking about the output type, I'll put in there, apply the tilt framework. I do a project-based approach, make sure this is an assessment that or an artifact that students can use in their profession. So that the output type is where I'll specify right here, use the tilt framework to create this. And it does a beautiful job of applying it every single time.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I just, my brain, it made the connection without putting it in writing. I appreciate the question. Okay, so now we've got this beautiful assessment. And as part of the TILT framework, we want to be clear what the grading criteria is for the students. And I think we've got a whole another session coming up next about creating a rubric, right, Lori? My brain told me that we did, so I didn't go in depth. I think we do.
I think so. I have to look.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, if not, I'm pretty sure that's why I didn't do too much detail here because I was 90% sure we're doing something on creating a rubric. But AI is super beneficial in helping you create that rubric. So when you have all the specifics of the assignment and you've revised it to make it, this is the perfect assessment, regardless of if it's a discussion board or just a regular assessment, typical assessment, you want to create that rubric. You want to help by creating a usable rubric by defining that criteria. And this is where you, again, have to use your instructor brain, so we're not outsourcing our job, on deciding what truly matters in the student work. What I decided for me is that I didn't really care all that much about the spelling and the grammar and the punctuation. I'm not an English teacher. It really, truly does not matter to me. And so I will tell it that presentation style is not important to me. Don't put that into the rubric because every single time it'll always put that. It'll just assume you're a teacher. Of course, that matters to you. No, I decided it wasn't a criteria that was important to me. Now, if the output is that they're creating a brochure that they're going to share with their colleagues, and that's going to be part of the skills that they're going to have to demonstrate because it needs to be a professional artifact. So that would be listed in the criteria. Are you evaluating only the skills that are directly taught in your class? So I will tell it that here are the skills that are being assessed. All the criteria on the rubric need to align directly to these skills. And how I teach is that each skill is worth 3 points. So however many skills, it's not iterations, but groupings of three. Jim's going to tell me what the right word is. Somethings of three. And so any criteria that's listed, I'm not going to grade it unless it applies directly to that skill. And so that's the one of the criterion that I give to the AI and help me creating the rubric. Does creativity count? Because if I tell it I like project-based learning, I want it to be a good artifact, then I'll always try to give points for creativity. And that's not what my courses are about. I love to see the creative parts of my students in action, but I am myself not a creative person. And so I wouldn't want to be judged on the amount of creativity I apply. What I'm looking at is, did they demonstrate the knowledge? So I don't want creativity to be a part of the rubric. What about presentation and communication? You really want to be crystal clear with the AI what the elements are that you're going to be grading that assessment on or using to assess it. And then establish the performance level. So we've got those criteria down, whatever that access is. I know Jim's going, it's X, it's Y, something. And then the one across the top, whatever that one is. So for mine, again, I always grade skills-based grading and it's iterations of 3, and it's always proficient, approaching proficiency, are not proficient yet. I don't do exceeds proficiency because I want the students to know all you need to do is proficient. If you exceeds proficiency, I'm going to give you a whole lot of praise in the comments, but proficient is what I'm looking for. And that's what I'm going to grade at. And I found that that's created some really solid rubrics. Still need to look at the words that are used, but by taking the time to be very clear about my grading criteria in the rubric, it's produced some pretty solid rubrics that I can use. And remember, you've already been engaging in the conversation about the assignment creation. And another great thing about the AI is it's remembering all of that. So it's not like you've taken and started a new chat. Now start the rubric. It's been with you as you've done these iterations for the assessment. So it is able to create a rubric that applying to that assessment because you've had that conversation, you've laid the foundation and the groundwork for all that information that you have had to have.
Yeah.
Good to go? Okay.
I think,
Okay.
Horia,
Yep.
do you have a comment or no? Okay.
All right. Okay. So when we're creating assessments, now we've created all the assessments, we've created this brilliant assessment. So what about feedback? And this was something when I first started doing, I was a little reluctant to share because, we all can be a little bit judgy. But I decided, you know what? As I've had feedback from my students about how much they appreciate the time I've taken to give them personalized feedback on every single assessment. I felt, you know what, this is a worthwhile conversation to have with other faculty because I know we feel very passionately about whether or not we will allow AI to do our grading for us. So I like to phrase it in a way that's AI supported grading. And like I said, it every single semester that I've been doing this, I will always have at least one student that'll send me a note afterwards telling me how much they appreciated the time I took to create a personalized feedback on every single assessment that they've done. There is no way without AI I could ever do that. I teach part-time right now and I have almost 200 students. So that would not be possible for, no, that's exaggeration, 100 students. I would not be able to do that if I wasn't using AI supported grading. So I've sat down before I began this and decided, okay, who am I as far as what I believe in my grading? What is the personality that I want to come across when I'm providing the personalized feedback? And I want to contextualize this with I still read every single thing my students submit, and I still read every single thing the AI supported grading produces. So don't walk away saying Amanda's offloaded the grading to AI. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying AI is helping me to create personalized feedback for my students. This can help create objective standards-based feedback that looks at the strength and the areas of growth for the students. I found in the past that sometimes I can be pretty subjective depending on what the student wrote. If it's something that I felt very passionate about, the tendency was to forget about all of the other criterion I had established because they did this other part so well, but it didn't really produce something. They didn't produce something that was aligned with the skills. So I found that this really helps me to be so much more objective because I've sat there and argued with the AI before. It's given the student the score on the rubric, and I said, no, I don't think that's right. Show me where the student meets the rubric or doesn't meet the rubric on this. Show me your reasoning. And it spells out the reasoning right there. And I really had to, as an instructor, sit back and go, you know what? You're right. That was way subjective in how I was interpreting what the student said. You allowed me to see more objectively. And I always say thank you because they're going to rule the world, and I'd like them to remember I was nice to them. So I've created just a little blurb that I use text expander. So whenever I'm starting to grade an assignment, I just type in feedback, and that paragraph that I have right there just pops up. And I tweak it and change it depending on what the assessment is. But this is what I've decided who I would like, who I am in my grading and what I want to be a consistent level of feedback because it is my personality that the AI gives. So I say, can you help me grade and provide succinct feedback to my students on this assignment? Here's the format for the feedback, 2 to 3 sentences, personalized relationship building comments tied specifically to information in their unique submission because I want it to pull out specific things they've said so that it's obvious to students I've read your words and they are valid to me. Align with the rubric, but don't specifically mention the rubric unless they don't align with proficient. Again, this is a big part of who I am. I didn't want it to be a very technical, you didn't meet these elements of the rubric. I want it to be a more relationship-based type of feedback. So that was important to me. Align with the assignment requirements, mention missing components. If they need to improve based on the rubric, give specific feedback on how they can improve to meet the objectives for the assignment. And then always, before you give an AI the directive, do you have any questions about the feedback style before I give you the assignment prompt and rubric? Very rarely will it have questions, especially as I've had the same conversation again and again and again, but I always have it in there. Then I provide the assignment and the rubric, and after after I provide the prompt and the rubric, or the assignment and the rubric, I say, do you have any questions about the assignment or the rubric? Again, getting it to think about what it's about to do. Okay. So that's the feedback. I wanted to stop because that was kind of abrupt, abrupt transition. Any questions about providing feedback? Good to go? Okay.
No, I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go.
I, so I'm doing some of these kinds of things, and I often find that I have to remind it what I want because it tends to stray away from what I've asked it to do.
Yep. I have switched over to Gemini and it does it a whole lot less than OpenAI. OpenAI was infuriating, ChatGPT, infuriating to me because I had to do it much more consistently. Now, Gemini, it does it a lot less. It could be subjective. I could just be making things up, but I do feel Gemini, I have to remind it less. What it does tend to do for me is that it starts getting harsher. And so I have to remind it, hey, just chillax. That's not the kind of feedback I'd like you to be giving.
Well, that's good. The other thing I've noticed is that the other day we were arguing about how I wanted something graded. And I just said it 4 or 5 times, and it kept coming back and saying, no, but this is how it's supposed to be. And I
Yeah.
didn't like it. Made me
Yeah, I've
like it.
started again. Absolutely have had that experience. So I closed the chat, cleared my cookies, and started again.
Okay, thank you. I'll clear
Yeah,
those.
no, I wish it was a better answer, but at the same time, it's kind of a little comforting because you realize, oh, you are a machine because you're just not getting it. And so I've found that once I've gone back and forth 2 or 3 times, it's down too deep down that rabbit hole. The fox has got it and it's devouring it. So I'm going to kill you and then I'm going to come back and start again. And it can be annoying, especially if you've established all the other things. But for me personally, I've found it more worthwhile on my time to just dump you and start again.
So you find that clearing your cookies keeps like, because I've used ChatGPT for different things, not right now, not grading or anything like that. But like I put in a prompt the other day and it answered it based on some other things that I was working on, even though I had said like this is different. Like, and I put it in a different chat, and then I had to go in and say, this is different. I'm not talking about that. But does clearing the cookies help with that? Like sometimes I wanted to remember.
I feel like it does. I know you can have settings. I haven't looked at them in OpenAI in a while, but I'm fairly certain Gemini does it where you can say, connect my chats or remember pieces of me that I don't remember what the specific wording is. I do feel it does it anyway. Even if you tell it don't remember it, it overrides that. So I feel better when I clear my cookies, when I don't want it to
Okay.
remember things like that. Um, I do, in all honesty, I do think it still does, but my psychosomatically, I feel better about it.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when it's really useful because it's like remembering, like, oh, you're working on Flex and it remembers all of that info. But
Hmm.
there are times where it's like, no, this is new. I'm talking about this and not
Yeah.
whatever. So Robert had, and I'm not quite sure I understand this, use projects and have overall project prompts. I'm not sure what that was in reference to, but that's a comment in the chat.
For project-based teaching type of prompts. Actually, if you want to clarify, Robert, either unmute or in the chat is fine. We can talk about that. It might have been a comment in all my words. Okay, no problem. We can go on when you're ready.
He needs a moment. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no problem. All right. Um,
Oh, here's another question. Sorry, Amanda. Do you inform students that you are using AI to create, grade, and provide AI-generated feedback for assignments? How does this align with the syllabus statement allowing, disallowing student AI use? Yeah, I always feel conflicted about this. So it's a great question, Tom.
yeah, I don't provide the specifics. But I do tell students that I use AI in my class. I use it to help guide me in content. I use it to help me create feedback. So there are specific parts of my course when I'm creating content that I'm very specific. Like I use Notebook LM to create a chapter or a module overview. And so I'm very specific there. But the syllabus statement is very basic of that. I use AI in this class to help me provide objective feedback, to generate content, to help me create assessments. And then for my students' use of it in every assessment, I'll tell them, here are some great, not every, I try to do it every assessment, but nobody's perfect. I offer suggestions of here are some great ways you could use AI to supplement or complement this assignment. I do feel they'll still use it, beyond that, but I'm to the point now where I love seeing spelling and grammar mistakes in what my students submit because I'm like, yes, they used it the right way. They didn't just copy and paste. So it's sign of the ages when you're happy when you see spelling and grammar mistakes. So I am not fully transparent with my students. I don't say I am using it to generate all of that personalized feedback that you have there. I do feel that that might take away from the relationship building part of it, but I do tell them I utilize AI to support me in my teaching.
Well, so I feel really conflicted about this too, because before AI, if I was looking for a new assignment for something or like an idea, I would go and I would Google and I would find, try and find, like you can find so much online, even before AI, right? And so but I never told my students like, oh yeah, I Googled, better question for X, Y, and Z, or I went and talked to my colleagues about this assignment. Like I never shared that information. Now, if I took something off of the internet, I might have said, I got this from wherever, but so and how do your students feel if they know you're using AI? I mean, you seem fairly like more lenient about using AI in class than other people, but do they question you at all and say, hey, how did you use it? Or do they seem to care?
Yeah. And it's funny. The next slide, we're going to talk about some of the different reasons why we can work with students on like why I get to use it and you don't get to use it. Maybe.
Perfect.
But I do. I think those are all things that we have to wrestle with and figure out what we're comfortable with. I am very careful when when the AI is providing me with feedback, that I remove any personalized information. So I make sure that their name's not on it. And if I don't have it help me with a reflection or journal type where it's going to be something very personal. Because I do think that those are things where it's not fair to the student that any personal information is there. So I do make sure that the student's name is removed from that. And it's not foolproof. Sometimes it'll slip by if they've put something in there or I've missed it. But I do really try and think through those types of decisions. Okay. So teaching students about AI through assessment. Yes, AI is definitely here. And if you think students aren't using it in your class, then they are. I don't know what else to tell you. Even if you forbid it, you're only going to have your really good teacher-pleasing students that aren't going to use it. We still have about 80+% that'll use it, even if you have very strict anti-AI policies. It's just the world we're in. And sometimes they can't even avoid it. AI is involved in everything. So I always like to tell instructors that they are using it, even if you think they're not. They are. Study after study after study, students have said, "Oh yeah, my instructor forbids me from use it, but I use it for every assignment." So we have a certain amount of responsibility. Well, I feel I have a certain amount of responsibility to help students start thinking critically about what is the world going to be like if we're not thinking of this tool in a responsible way. Because these are ethical beings. We have this opportunity to be able to say, all right, what is the world of the future? I want my students to go in and have those types of conversation because this is the world that they're going to live in. I feel so incredibly fortunate that I didn't have to go through my education battling with the temptation to use AI because I probably would because I wouldn't know the value of having to sit there and read through a research article or dive into those types of things. I'm so glad there wasn't social media when I was a teenager. All those types of things. We can't just make blanket statements about how dare they when this is a really difficult life that they're having to navigate and figure out, one that we didn't have to. So we can have conversations and we can really think about how do we design thought-provoking AI-centric tasks. Again, this is the world that they're having to live in. So how can we help them to think about the ethics of that world that they're going to have to live in and use it in an appropriate way? So we can think about if it's appropriate in whatever discipline we're teaching, create assignments where students have to analyze the AI societal implications. So if you're teaching a sociology class, or even I'm looking at Danielle, a biology class, like what is going to be the future of analyzing organisms with AI? What are the ethics of it? Those types of things where they're having to think about the knowledge base of the discipline, but in a way that's going to force them to incorporate AI and think critically about it. And the ethical considerations of automating everything in our life. Well, what does that mean for us? Are we all going to be like, I always think of I think it was Wall-E, the not commercial, movie where they're all in the spaceship floating around in the things and everything is automated. Always, that's in my head that that's what our future is going to be. So I try and push back against that. Generate critical thinking prompts. So use AI tools to create sophisticated prompts that challenge students to think deeply and through these types of things. I mean, again, put that image or the little gif of the people in Wall-E and say, do you think this is our destiny, that this is what our life is going to be like if we turn it over to AI, and why or why not? Those are types of things that they're going to have to wrestle with. This is the world that they're going to have to deal with. Evaluate AI generated content. You can engage students in analyzing and critiquing that AI generated content for the bias. So say, hey, create this using AI. Now let's take a look at it. Is it all accurate? Is it authentic? Is it biased? Is it appropriate? So you can look at what the AI produced and say, is this really what you wanted to say right there in that conversation with them? When we think about it for academic integrity, again, we didn't have to wrestle through these things when we were going through our schooling. So there's a different ways that we can take a look at it. And we've got the carrot and the stick, or the extrinsic and the intrinsic motivation, I suppose is a better way to phrase it. So there's those extrinsic motivational tactics where, again, the extrinsic is the shame from the outside coming in. So this is all coming from an article that was written by the California Education Learning Lab. So none of this is my ideas, but it was one of those articles that I read that really caused me or helped grasp what I was wrestling with in my own class. How do I help students understand that this is a big deal for our future, and you need to know how to think critically, or you're going to kill the babies out there. So whatever it is in your own class, mine they'll kill the babies because it's an infant toddler class. So things that you can say to help extrinsically motivate them. Don't humiliate yourself. Outsourcing thinking now means your incompetence later, which will be personally humiliating. So if you're not thinking about it now, out in that real world, you're going to look like a flippin' idiot. So I'm just telling you, you might as well think now, because you're not always going to have AI in your pocket. That's external shame motivation, and depending on your students, that might be motivating to them. Don't embarrass the institution. Like, hey, this is why I care about this. By me putting you out there into the world, I'm saying that we've done a good job educating you. And if you go out into the world and you're not educated well, it's embarrassing for Reedley College, Fresno City College, wherever it is you're coming from. Don't devalue your peers' work. You undermine everyone else's degree, the hard work that they've taken, when you undercut it and outsource that thinking to AI. The real exam is coming. Your first job will expose those hollow skills. So that's aligned to that one of, hey, I don't have to live that real world. I did my time. I've gotten my job. I've proven myself. You're going to have to go out there in that job interview, and you're not going to have AI to be able to answer those questions. So think now in this safe space, because you're going to get out into that real world and do an interview, and you're not going to know how to think. And that's that external motivation. Cheating catches up. Again, you'll be caught when you need to perform without AI assistance. This is one of the things I always tell instructors that are very worried about that is this is their lives. The consequences for these actions are their consequences. And I tell it to my students as well is it breaks my heart to think you are setting yourself up to live a life that's not your truest potential. You have to be able to think hard now in order to be able to live that great life that you want to live. Now, those are the external motivation. We do know that despite what we think, intrinsic motivation is a much more powerful motivation tool. And it might sound like a bunch of propaganda, but it really does matter. And by thinking truly that extrinsic motivation is a better way forward, it also helps us to avoid the trap of thinking poorly of our students all the time, because we really want to think, yes, I know that you can do this intrinsically. So We want to tell students invest in yourself. The irreplaceable time for learning shapes who you'll become. You've chosen to invest in this time. This is the person that you want to be. Think about who you want to be in the future. Honor your passion. They are sitting there in your college classroom for a reason. It's a great part of teaching college. There is no other external reason they are there besides the fact that they want to learn something. Nobody is forcing them, for the most part, to go to college. So honor that time. Make integrity a habit. Talk to them about the small daily choices we make build lifelong character. It's a very slippery slope to becoming an unethical person. If we start becoming comfortable with using AI, despite the fact that we're not going to, other parts of lying and cheating in our lives are going to become easier. It changes the character, it changes who we are inside. Honor your peers. No one wants to sit next to a colleague who skated through school. I don't want to be that person that my colleague is having to do all the work because I used AI through my whole degree. So choose that to your students. Learn in a community. College is about building human connections and learning together. We are relationship-based beings. And so honor that by saying, let's learn together, let's grow together, let's think critically together. So that's so much more fun, that intrinsic motivation. I mean, the extrinsic, there's a place for it. You can definitely do both, but we want to also be able to talk about that intrinsic motivation as well. All right. So what are some practical AI tools that we can use today? And these are some really fun ones that I learned about just recently. So one of the really cool tools that I found recently was there's a Playlab bot that can help generate quizzes for Canvas. And this was actually designed by the instructional designer over at Clovis. She's fantastic. She was sharing with us today, and I thought, oh, perfect, I'm talking about it. So let me see if I can get the link. I was thinking about finishing that sentence and I didn't. So this is just a Playlab bot that I just lost it. That you can have an intuitive interface. It makes you go through the tilt framework and all those types of things to create your quizzes, but it's going to create an output that you can then plug into the New York City, some New York Institute of Technology created a Canvas exam converter. So it will create this Playlab bot. It will, after you've created all the quiz questions, it will take all those quiz questions and put it in a format that you can plug into this Canvas exam converter that will give you what's called a QTI file that you can import into Canvas. So it's a really cool time-saving things. And then after you do all of this, you can deploy, iterate, after you launch the quiz, make the changes, and then go back and use these tools to be able to create new and cool assessments. So in the last 4 minutes with time, a little bit of time for questions. I always hope we have time to play, but I talk too much to do that. So my apologies. You can transform your assessment from burden to opportunity. So assessment really should be the key part of our teaching because we want to be able to, I shouldn't say that, that's going to make people mad. Assessment should be something that we think more about than we do traditionally in our teaching, because it's really how we get to know if what we're teaching is effective, if my students able to demonstrate those knowledge. So using AI can help us to really think through those hard questions that we hadn't thought about before. Start small, but think about big. Try starting this week. What are some ways that I can use AI to get a better output just this week? You don't have to wait until the spring semester. Say, all right, starting in spring, I'm all in. Say, you know what? Starting with whatever module I'm introducing next week, I'm going to introduce some AI-powered assessments or feedback or whatever it is I want. You don't have to wait to the start of the semester to try something new. Try it out for the next assessment that you did. Take an assessment that you are planning on launching tomorrow and just putting into the AI and say, hey, what questions might students have about this? Remember all those parameters so you can give the AI all the correct information before it assesses it. But that's a simple way to be able to start, is just to have it analyze it for any questions students might have. All right, so I left 3 minutes. Any questions in 3 minutes? Any thoughts, confirms, concerns, things you want to argue about, Jim?
Yeah, I wanted to touch back on
Oh, yeah.
the projects. So by using projects, I've been using AI for Anthropic AI, the Claude,
Claude. Mhm.
and Anthropic's got a lot of cool tools, but they have projects, and in the projects you have a project prompt that allows me to say all of the chats I have in this project need to follow this prompt.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I go through with that one prompt, I could go through my individual chapters and parse. I got my COR, I got all my important things in there, and it always knows to check all of those things because that's my project prompt. And that allows me to create the same vibe for all the content that gets out. And that's, I think, is what you guys are talking about with finding ways to get things to be more consistent.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I haven't experimented with Claude much. I know GPT will allow you to do, and they don't call it projects, but it's the same, or maybe they do call it project, grouping things together like that. And I know Gemini has something of the equivalent, but yeah, great reminder. Thank you for that, where you can front load all the information and say this all relates to that. It's a good reminder.
And you should really play around with Claude.
You know what? It limits the amount of information even on the paid version, so I get irritated.
There's some weird limitations with it, but some of the things that I've been able to accomplish is genuinely incredible.
Yeah, no, I do. Every time I've used it, if I have something that's just one task where I know it's not going to limit my amount of input, I'll always run it through Claude because it is impressive what it can input. I agree. It's a great tool. I think ChatGPT is probably the worst tool that's out there right now. Gemini and Claude are probably, to me, the best, but I do like Claude a lot. It just limits the amount of tokens I can have, and it makes me mad. I don't want it to tell me I can't do anymore. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, topic ideas? You can give them to Lori and me.
Yeah, if you have any other topic ideas for anything, if you're at Reedley College, I'm looking for flex ideas, and let me know. Other than that, I appreciate everyone being here today. And yeah, if you have any comments or questions, you can always ask Amanda, email her, you can email me. I might be able to answer.